how we are or what we are as a company and how we get things done. So that is important because, if you're Toyota and you have a principle of just in time, whereby you don't want to have warehouses and you don't want to have stock, but you want the goods to be supplied brought in just at the right time when the component parts are being put onto the manufacturing site, onto the car, which reduces all your warehousing costs, warehousing staff, IT costs, component costs in terms of stock for inventory. Then if you then want to use that, if you have that type of culture, then you would translate that culture to other regions within the world, because you wouldn't want that way of doing things and how you conduct your business to be different from how you do it in Japan and how you do it in Europe. It would all be the same way. So that type of company culture would then translate, which would be a good thing. Good thing for the people or the European Toyota organization, but difficult because you may not have the right skill set, you might not have the right way of thinking, you might not have people in the UK with the necessary mindset in order to carry that way of or that culture out. I mean, when employees in Japan go on strike, they still have a strong work ethic, so they would still go to work, but they would have an armband on them saying, I'm on strike. But in the UK, if someone goes on strike, that means they come out of the production, they stop all the work, and cars are not being made, which can't happen under the kind of like way of thinking or culture in terms of the way Toyota do things. So again, having the right mindset, the right people, the right skill set to carry out all these functions in the way that Toyota would want them to fit into their way of doing things would be extremely important. And it's good because then that allows Toyota in the UK to develop strong ties with their suppliers, strong ties. But again, this is a technique and skill that the people in a different region would need to develop in terms of doing things in this different way. Again, a very good thing in the long term, very difficult if you don't have the right resources in order to carry this type of culture out. Again, why different manufacturers will, place their plants in different places that has the right resources, the people, the skills, the mindset, the culture to actually implement the way the things, what they want to be done in the way that they want to be done it. Okay, so organizational culture, very, very important. Organizational culture, translates from how that company does things. BMW, for instance, is an independent company of the freedom in the light to protect your inventive thinking, which remarkable things can and will happen. BMW has adapted the idea and provide a place where workers feel connected, feel more like a family, and work more as a lifestyle. So this is then translated from the way they do things in BMW in Germany to our plants in other parts of the world. Again, the same type of culture, philosophy, way of doing things. It wouldn't be, a different way of doing things in one country than another in terms of its organizational culture. There might be some in terms of, it might be adapted slightly, but basically it would be very similar. We're also thinking, and when we talk about organizational culture, we're also looking at the culture of the country as well. The culture of the country may differ from one country to another, which means that the need of your customers will differ. If your needs of your customers will differ, that will then affect your HR department, will affect your marketing department in terms of your marketing strategy, in terms of your segmentation, targeting, positioning, which would then affect your marketing mix, your product, your price, your place, your promotion, your people, process and physical evidence. And all these things would be affected and adapted to the culture with which you're working in. Okay, so when we look at the question again, evaluate the effectiveness of globalization. influences of globalization on organizational governance and leadership, structure, and cultural and function. So you have to look at the pros and cons of, governance and leadership in terms of global companies. You can take, and the best way to answer this is to take specific examples. Governance and leadership of McDonald's and how they do things, and why they do things, and the benefits they actually get from these in terms of efficiency, standardization, better quality. But at the same time, the negative side of things in terms of high rate of turnover of staff because these systems are quite mechanized. Tailored scientific approach where you mechanize and make things very efficient, but generally the people are paid quite low and you have a high staff turnover, so you have additional costs in terms of staff having to then be retrained, re-interviewed, hired, trained, and to go through the whole process. So if you look at organizational culture, we looked at Apple and their type of organizational structure in terms of a spoke wheel, hierarchical, middle sector, and then at the lower end you've got the loose matrix type structure. And then we looked at how Toyota before had centralized decision making, and then they decentralized it, and they decentralized it for the purpose of trying to be more competitive in terms of reacting to what their competitors were doing. And then organizational culture, again, organizational culture in terms of taking how things are done from one company to another and implementing it elsewhere. Not always the easiest thing to do because of the mindset of the people who you're trying to train to do it your way. They don't always have the same mindset. And then also the culture of the country as well, organizational culture, and also the culture of that country, making sure that you meet the needs. Your products might differ slightly, the marketing will also differ, and so these would need to be taken into consideration to meet those needs. So I hope that has answered the question today. So you must make sure that when you're answering this question that you look at the influences of globalization on organizational governance and leadership, 1. Organizational structure, 2. And 3, organizational culture and functions. Okay? Many thanks. I'm Mr. Tan.